how did the Vikings design and build winter homes capable of supporting work, rest, and the shelter of animals in some of the harshest climates of northern Europe? The answer lies not merely in the use of timber, thatch, and turf, but in a sophisticated understanding of environment, materials, and human needs. For centuries, Viking communities endured long, freezing winters, wind-swept landscapes, and heavy snowfall. Yet their homes were not just shelters. They were multifunctional spaces that harmonized living, working, and caring for animals under one roof. Every structural decision, from roof pitch to floor elevation, was informed by a deep awareness of thermal dynamics, durability, and the rhythms of daily life. A typical Viking winter home, often called a longhouse, was a feat of practical engineering. These elongated structures were built using a frame of timber, frequently sourced from local forests, and reinforced with vertical posts and crossbeams that could bear the immense weight of snow-laden roofs. Walls were insulated with layers of turf, clay, or wattle and daub, materials chosen for their ability to retain heat and resist the chilling winds of the north. In the harshest regions, some homes even incorporated double walls with air gaps to enhance insulation. Roofs were steeply pitched, allowing snow and rain to slide off naturally, reducing the risk of collapse, while the overhangs protected walls from erosion and frost. This careful attention to form and material meant that the home itself became a passive heating system, retaining warmth generated from both fires and bodies inside. Inside, the longhouse was a multifunctional environment. At one end, the hearth served as the center of domestic life, providing warmth, light, and a place to cook. Smoke from the fire rose through a simple vent or opening in the roof, but in many homes, it lingered within the space to help preserve meat and add a layer of insulation against the cold. Around the hearth, family members slept, ate, and performed tasks that required the greatest warmth, creating a natural zoning system within the house. Workspaces for tool making, weaving, and leather preparation were positioned further from the fire, where the cooler air could prevent materials from drying too quickly or becoming damaged by excess heat. Animal accommodation was ingeniously integrated into these designs. Livestock, including cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs, were housed at the opposite end of the longhouse or in an adjoining stable connected to the main structure. By keeping animals within or adjacent to the home, Vikings exploited the natural heat produced by their bodies, which contributed to warming the human living areas. This arrangement also simplified the care of animals during storms, reduced the risk of theft, and ensured that food sources such as milk and eggs were accessible without prolonged exposure to the cold. Floors in animal areas were often covered with straw or moss to provide insulation and prevent freezing, reflecting a careful understanding of comfort and hygiene in extreme conditions. The interior layout was meticulously organized to balance functionality and comfort. Sleeping platforms or benches, often elevated to avoid cold floors, were lined with furs, hides, or straw, creating insulated resting spaces that could retain body heat overnight. Families clustered according to size, age, and social status, ensuring that shared warmth was maximized while maintaining a sense of order and privacy. Daily activities were choreographed around the flow of warmth, light, and air, with high-traffic areas near the fire and quieter zones positioned at the edges of the home. This division of space reflected both environmental and social intelligence, demonstrating that Viking longhouses were engineered to support physical survival as well as family organization. Construction techniques also accounted for longevity and seasonal stress. Wood framing was often treated with tar or oil to resist moisture, while turf or thatch roofs were maintained annually, with fresh layers added to improve insulation. Stone foundations were used in regions with soft or unstable soil, preventing rot and structural collapse. Roof beams were designed to accommodate heavy snowfall without sagging, and in areas prone to ice, extended eaves directed runoff safely away from walls and entrances. Maintenance was a continuous process, with families performing inspections and repairs each autumn to ensure the house could withstand the worst months of winter. The choice of location for a longhouse was equally critical. Homes were often sited on elevated ground or natural terraces to avoid flooding from melting snow, while proximity to water and pasture land facilitated daily work with minimal exposure to the elements. Orientation mattered as well. Entrances were frequently placed to minimize wind penetration, while larger windows or openings, when used, were positioned to capture sunlight during the brief winter days. Trees and outbuildings were strategically positioned to provide windbreaks, further improving the thermal efficiency of the settlement. Every decision reflected a balance between safety, comfort, and efficiency, showcasing the Vikings' holistic approach to winter living. Beyond mere survival, the design of these homes facilitated productivity. Work areas for crafting, metalworking, and textile production were deliberately placed to make use of available light from the hearth or small windows. Smoke-filled interiors, while a challenge for breathing, created a stable microclimate for drying hides, curing meat, and preserving food for winter consumption. Families developed routines around these spaces, using them for both immediate labor and long-term preparation for the colder months. This integration of living and working areas reduced the need to venture outside in severe weather, preserving energy and minimizing exposure to frostbite or hypothermia. Social life was also carefully accommodated. The longhouse allowed for family gatherings, storytelling, and shared meals, all centered around the hearth. Seasonal celebrations and community discussions often took place indoors during the winter, making the home a hub of cultural activity as well as physical survival. The architecture supported these social functions by providing ample space for movement, seating, and observation, while maintaining warmth and safety. Elevated platforms could accommodate multiple generations, allowing elders to observe and instruct children, reinforcing cultural knowledge and household hierarchy. Vikings also employed clever techniques to optimize light and warmth simultaneously. Smoke from the fire was directed strategically to maintain a relatively clear zone around work areas, while allowing the rest of the interior to retain warmth. Reflective surfaces, including polished metal or light-colored interior walls, helped diffuse the glow of the fire throughout the longhouse. Even in the darkest months, these measures ensured that essential work and domestic activities could continue without reliance on external sources of light, demonstrating a nuanced understanding of environmental management. Fuel storage and management were another key component of longhouse engineering. Wood, peat, and dried animal fat were stored in insulated spaces within or adjacent to the home, allowing for efficient access during winter storms. Families carefully rationed their fuel, knowing that the balance of warmth, cooking capacity, and light depended on the controlled use of these resources. Storage techniques were often combined with elevated platforms or insulated chests to prevent dampness and decay, further demonstrating the attention to detail that characterized Viking winter homes. In addition to architecture, the design of pathways, entryways, and secondary structures contributed to the overall effectiveness of the settlement. Mud or turf-covered entryways reduced drafts, while enclosed porches provided a transitional space for removing snow-laden clothing or tending to animals. Outbuildings for storage, blacksmithing, and small-scale workshops were positioned to maximize accessibility while minimizing exposure to wind and cold. These spatial arrangements reduced energy expenditure, improved efficiency, and reinforced the integrated approach to living, working, and social interaction under extreme conditions. Ventilation and air quality were carefully managed despite the prevalence of smoke and confined spaces. Roof vents, small openings, and adjustable flaps allowed families to control airflow, maintaining oxygen levels and reducing the accumulation of smoke in sleeping and work areas. The Vikings demonstrated an understanding of how heat and air moved within the space, adjusting openings seasonally and daily to maintain a balance between warmth retention and breathable air. This combination of practical design and experiential knowledge ensured that longhouses remained livable, productive, and safe throughout the long winter months. Even the psychological aspects of winter living were considered in longhouse design. Spaces were arranged to provide comfort, social interaction, and mental stimulation despite the isolation imposed by snow, ice, and limited daylight. Elevated platforms, central hearths, and visible work areas encouraged family engagement and observation, reducing boredom and anxiety. The presence of animals within the home not only contributed heat, but also provided companionship and a sense of routine. These design considerations illustrate that Viking winter homes were not merely functional shelters, they were living environments shaped to support human life in its full complexity, combining physical, social, and emotional needs. The sophistication of Viking winter homes was the result of centuries of experience, observation, and refinement. Knowledge of local materials, weather patterns, animal behavior, and human ergonomics informed every aspect of construction and layout. Families adapted techniques to the severity of specific winters, the availability of timber, and the size of the household, creating dwellings that were flexible, durable, and intimately connected to the natural environment. This iterative process of design, maintenance, and adaptation allowed Viking communities to thrive despite extreme climatic challenges, preserving life, productivity, and culture through the long winter months. As winter tightened its grip on the northern landscapes, the Viking longhouse became a hub of activity, carefully orchestrated to support survival, work, and social cohesion. Daily life revolved around a balance of labor, rest, and maintenance, each chore shaped by the demands of the cold months and the structure of the home itself. The central hearth was the heart of activity, providing heat for cooking, warmth for sleeping, and a gathering place for social interaction. Around it, families organized their routines with meticulous attention to efficiency, maximizing the benefits of the fire while minimizing exposure to drafts or smoke. Work was central to longhouse life, and the structure of the home allowed for multiple activities to occur simultaneously. Crafting tasks, such as weaving, tanning hides, or repairing wooden tools, were often performed on elevated platforms or along designated workspaces. These areas were strategically placed further from the hearth, where cooler temperatures helped preserve delicate materials and prevented fires from causing damage. By separating work zones from sleeping areas, families could maintain a continuous workflow while protecting their rest spaces from heat, soot, or clutter. Tools were often stored nearby for easy access, and specialized shelves or racks kept materials organized, reducing the time and effort needed to complete essential tasks. Food preparation was a central component of winter survival and dictated much of the household schedule. Meat, fish, and dairy products required careful preservation, and the longhouse offered an ideal environment for curing, drying, and smoking. The smoke from the hearth, while dense at times, aided in keeping insects away and slowing spoilage. Meat and fish were often hung on beams or stored in raised compartments to maintain dryness and protect against rodents. The placement of these storage areas was intentional, allowing families to retrieve supplies quickly while ensuring minimal disruption to daily activity. Preparing food for storage also served as a teaching moment for children, who learned techniques for slicing, smoking, and drying through observation and guided practice. Animal care was fully integrated into the rhythm of the home. Livestock housed at one end of the longhouse contributed warmth to the living spaces, and families carefully managed the movement and feeding of animals to optimize this natural heating effect. Straw, moss, and other insulating materials were regularly replaced to maintain comfort and prevent illness, while water and food were provided with minimal exposure to the frigid outdoors. Tasks such as milking, cleaning, or checking the health of animals were scheduled around human labor and sleeping routines, ensuring that both human and animal needs were met without compromise. Older children often assisted with these chores, gaining hands-on experience in husbandry while contributing to the household's overall efficiency. Rest and sleep were treated with equal care. Sleeping platforms were elevated to reduce contact with cold floors, layered with furs, straw, and sometimes moss to enhance insulation. Family members were grouped to maximize warmth, with elders or adults often occupying central positions and children clustered nearby. Seasonal adjustments were made as temperatures fluctuated. Additional furs were added during the harshest periods, and ventilation openings were adjusted to maintain air quality without letting excessive cold seep in. These carefully managed arrangements ensured that energy was conserved, preventing fatigue and maintaining the ability to perform essential tasks throughout the winter. The longhouse also supported social cohesion. The central hearth served as the natural gathering point for conversation, storytelling, and instruction. Elders and adults passed down knowledge about hunting, navigation, farming, and craftwork, embedding practical lessons within. Narratives and demonstrations. Children learned not only technical skills, but also social norms, cooperation, and respect for hierarchy. Festivals, rituals, and communal meals were celebrated indoors during the winter, creating opportunities for reinforcement of cultural identity and intergenerational bonding. Social activity was thus inseparable from practical survival, each interaction reinforcing the household's functionality while nurturing a sense of shared purpose. Lighting was another critical aspect of winter life. The hearth provided primary illumination, but supplemental oil lamps or small fires were sometimes used in work areas to extend productive hours. Placement was key. Lamps were positioned to maximize visibility without consuming excessive fuel or creating unsafe conditions. Families became adept at managing shadows and reflections, using polished metal surfaces or light-colored walls to diffuse glow throughout the space, even in the darkest months. Careful attention to light allowed crafts, repairs, and household tasks to continue efficiently, while also providing psychological comfort in an otherwise bleak environment. Ventilation and air quality required constant management. The accumulation of smoke, carbon dioxide, and moisture could make longhouse interiors uncomfortable or hazardous. Roof vents and adjustable flaps allowed families to regulate airflow, balancing warmth retention with breathable air. During periods of intense work near the hearth, openings were strategically adjusted to prevent smoke from overwhelming occupants while maintaining sufficient heat. The interplay between ventilation, heat, and daily activity demanded constant awareness, demonstrating that Viking winter homes were dynamic environments requiring attentive management to remain safe and comfortable. Seasonal resource management was another central concern. Fuel supplies, including wood, peat, and dried animal fat, were rationed and replenished with careful planning. Families monitored the use of fire throughout the day, using it intensively for work and cooking, but moderating consumption when possible to ensure reserves lasted through severe storms. Storage areas for fuel were insulated and protected from moisture, often located in elevated or enclosed spaces to prevent spoilage. The combination of rationing, storage strategy, and efficient fire management allowed households to survive extended periods without external resupply. Maintenance of the longhouse was a continuous responsibility. Roofs were repaired or reinforced as snowfall accumulated, walls were patched with turf or clay, and floors were periodically refreshed with straw or moss. These tasks were often undertaken collectively, with multiple family members contributing to the upkeep. Seasonal preparation became a ritual of its own, combining physical labor with social interaction and knowledge transmission. Children observed and assisted in these repairs, learning the structural principles behind construction and developing skills that would later allow them to contribute fully to the community's survival. The integration of work, rest, and animal care within the longhouse also created a subtle but profound psychological benefit. In an environment where the wind howled outside and temperatures plummeted, the home became a controlled microcosm of life. The warmth of the fire, the presence of animals, and the rhythms of daily tasks provided stability and a sense of continuity. Even in extreme conditions, the longhouse offered predictability, social support, and comfort, essential factors for maintaining morale and mental resilience during months of isolation. Family roles were clearly defined but flexible. Adults coordinated labor according to skills and physical capacity, while children contributed where possible and observed practices to gain experience. Elders maintained oversight, mediating conflicts, instructing in craft and survival techniques, and reinforcing cultural norms. Flexibility was key. If an emergency occurred, a storm, illness, or shortage, members adapted their roles and schedules to meet immediate needs. This dynamic management of labor and social interaction ensured that the household functioned efficiently, even under the stress of extended winter confinement. Workshops and craft areas were critical to maintaining the household's self-sufficiency. Tools for farming, hunting, and fishing required repair and maintenance, while household items like clothing, ropes, and containers were regularly crafted or mended. These spaces were designed to accommodate multiple workers simultaneously, with benches, racks, and elevated platforms to facilitate ergonomics and efficiency. The proximity of these areas to heat sources and light ensured that labor could continue without excessive exposure to the cold, while storage solutions kept materials organized and accessible. These practical design choices allowed the household to maintain productivity year-round, even when outdoor conditions were prohibitive. Animal husbandry was not merely functional, it was an integrated part of household life and social organization. Families coordinated feeding, cleaning, and monitoring of livestock with precision, knowing that healthy animals were essential for warmth, nutrition, and trade. Children were taught to observe behavior, detect illness, and manage stalls, embedding practical knowledge into daily routines. The presence of animals within the home reinforced social bonds and provided constant reminders of responsibility, cooperation, and care, linking domestic, economic, and emotional life in a single integrated environment. Communication and coordination with neighboring households also shaped winter life. Settlements were networks of interdependent homes where knowledge of weather, hunting conditions, and trade opportunities was shared regularly. Families visited one another for joint labor, social gatherings, and cultural rituals. These interactions strengthened alliances, facilitated resource sharing, and maintained a broader sense of community, all of which were essential for survival in the unpredictable northern climate. Winter homes were thus both private sanctuaries and nodes within a larger social and logistical network, demonstrating the Vikings' ability to manage both micro and macro-level survival challenges simultaneously. By the end of the winter months, the longhouse had proven its multifunctional value. Every aspect of its design, from the timber frame and insulated walls to sleeping platforms, animal areas, workspaces, and hearth placement, contributed to a finely tuned ecosystem that supported work, rest, and social cohesion. Families emerged with strengthened skills, preserved resources, and reinforced social bonds, ready to face the seasonal transitions of spring and summer. The knowledge embedded in these homes reflected generations of observation, adaptation, and refinement, combining architectural innovation with practical, social, and cultural intelligence. As winter gradually gave way to the first signs of spring, Viking families began to shift their daily routines, adapting to longer daylight hours, slightly milder temperatures, and the opportunities offered by outdoor activity. The longhouse remained the focal point of household life, but its role evolved. No longer solely a haven against storms and freezing nights, it became a staging ground for seasonal labor, repair of farming tools, preparation of fishing nets, and maintenance of hunting equipment. The same architectural features that had protected and supported families through the harshest months now facilitated a smooth transition back to outdoor productivity. Elevated platforms, insulated walls, and integrated workspaces ensured that indoor life could continue efficiently even as the household expanded activities into the surrounding landscape. During this seasonal transition, the careful organization of space and labor that had been maintained throughout winter became even more critical. Families coordinated outdoor tasks with indoor routines to maximize efficiency. Animal care, which had been concentrated indoors to take advantage of body heat, gradually shifted to pastures and open pens as temperatures rose. However, animals continued to be a central feature of longhouse life, their well-being directly affecting the household's nutrition, warmth, and economy. Feeding, milking, and monitoring livestock required careful scheduling, often blending indoor and outdoor labor to ensure continuity of care while taking advantage of favorable weather conditions. The return of light also impacted social and domestic routines. Longer days meant that some work could be conducted outside, reducing the reliance on hearths for light and warmth. Yet, the longhouse continued to function as the central hub for social interaction, education, and cultural continuity. Children engaged in skill-building activities, learning practical techniques from adults while participating in chores that now extended to gardens, small-scale farming plots, and storage of supplies for the upcoming months. Elders maintained their instructional role, integrating lessons about the environment, seasonal changes, and community responsibilities into both indoor and outdoor activities. The rhythm of life became more dynamic, blending the controlled environment of the home with the expanding opportunities of the thawing landscape. Food storage and preparation remained a focal point, even as fresh resources became available. The preservation techniques practiced indoors during winter, smoking, salting, and drying, were complemented by the processing of newly harvested fish, game, and dairy products. Families worked together to ensure that enough food was available for immediate consumption and continued storage, balancing labor, resource allocation, and social coordination. Meals continued to reinforce family cohesion as adults supervised younger members in both preparation and consumption, emphasizing both nutrition and shared responsibility. The careful interplay between indoor and outdoor work underscored the holistic design of the longhouse as a multifunctional environment. Crafting and repair work, essential during the confined winter months, now expanded with the availability of daylight. Carpentry, metalwork, and textile production took advantage of natural light near the building's openings, while sheltered work areas within the longhouse allowed for ongoing projects regardless of weather. Long-established routines from winter were maintained to organize tasks efficiently. Materials were stored in accessible locations, workspaces were arranged to optimize both ergonomics and proximity to heat sources, and knowledge transmission continued through observation, instruction, and practice. The home's design facilitated this seamless transition between winter and spring labor, demonstrating the adaptability and foresight inherent in Viking architecture. Animal husbandry, deeply integrated into household structure during winter, now took on additional seasonal responsibilities. Livestock were gradually released to pasture, while families maintained careful observation to prevent overgrazing and ensure continued access to shelter during unexpected weather events. The longhouse's design allowed for flexible access between indoor and outdoor spaces, enabling caretakers to move between animals, workspaces, and living areas efficiently. The continued presence of animals, whether inside the house or nearby, maintained warmth, provided food resources, and reinforced the household's interconnected system of labor, care, and productivity. Social life also flourished during this seasonal shift. While winter had confined gatherings to the longhouse, the onset of spring allowed families to visit neighbors, engage in communal tasks, and participate in broader settlement activities. Hunting, fishing, and small-scale agricultural work often became collaborative efforts, requiring coordination across households. This interdependence strengthened social bonds, reinforced shared knowledge, and ensured the collective security of the community. At the same time, indoor routines, storytelling, instruction, and ritual continued, providing continuity with the intense months of winter and anchoring social norms in familiar spaces. Maintenance of the longhouse remained essential as the seasons changed. Roofs were inspected and repaired, walls were reinforced, and floors refreshed with fresh straw or moss. Annual upkeep became a ritualized practice, combining practical necessity with social interaction. Families worked together to preserve the integrity of the structure, ensuring that it would withstand the next winter and continue to serve as a multifunctional hub. Children participated in these activities, learning the principles of construction, insulation, and organization that had guided generations of their ancestors. These maintenance routines were a form of applied education, blending hands-on skill development with the reinforcement of community values. Lighting and ventilation continued to be managed with care, though the balance shifted slightly with longer daylight hours. The central hearth remained vital for warmth, cooking, and social gathering, but supplementary lamps were used primarily for evening tasks or for specific craft work. Roof vents, small openings, and adjustable flaps allowed families to maintain air quality while regulating temperature, ensuring that smoke and humidity did not compromise the comfort or health of household members. This attention to airflow reflected a sophisticated understanding of the indoor environment, demonstrating that the longhouse functioned as a dynamic, responsive system rather than a static shelter. The integration of work, rest, and social life within the longhouse had long-term effects on family cohesion and cultural continuity. During the winter months, households had relied on carefully structured routines, defined roles, and cooperative labor to survive. These habits carried forward into spring, providing a foundation for efficient and harmonious living even as external conditions improved. Skills learned and refined indoors, crafting, tool maintenance, animal care, and food preservation, were applied outdoors, while social practices like storytelling, ritual, and instruction reinforced community identity. The longhouse served as both a physical and social anchor, linking survival, productivity, and cultural values across seasons. Community networks expanded with the arrival of spring. Neighboring households coordinated labor for tasks that required greater manpower, such as repairing shared infrastructure, organizing hunts, or constructing additional outbuildings. These cooperative efforts strengthened social bonds, facilitated the exchange of resources, and ensured that knowledge was shared across families. The design and placement of longhouses within a settlement supported this inter-household collaboration, with paths, courtyards, and animal enclosures arranged to maximize efficiency, minimize exposure to the elements, and promote social interaction. The legacy of Viking winter home engineering extended far beyond survival. The integration of heat management, spatial organization, labor coordination, and animal care demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of architecture, environmental adaptation, and human needs. These homes allowed families to thrive under extreme conditions, preserving both life and cultural knowledge across generations. They were not merely shelters, they were multifunctional ecosystems, finely tuned to support the interplay of work, rest, and social cohesion that defined Viking life. By combining durable construction materials, thoughtful layouts, and flexible systems of labor and resource management, Viking longhouses exemplified resilience in the face of harsh northern winters. Families adapted to seasonal shifts, responding to changes in light, temperature, and outdoor activity without compromising efficiency or comfort. Children learned essential skills through participation and observation, while adults coordinated tasks to maximize productivity and maintain household stability. Elders transmitted cultural knowledge, ensuring continuity of tradition and reinforcing social hierarchies within a functional and sustainable framework. As spring turned to summer, the longhouse remained a critical component of settlement life, providing shelter during storms, storage for surplus resources, and a base for continued craftsmanship and animal management. Its design allowed for adaptation to changing environmental conditions, supporting seasonal transitions without the need for major structural modifications. The careful integration of indoor and outdoor activities, social coordination, and practical survival. Strategies ensured that families were prepared for the cycles of the year, capable of sustaining themselves and their communities in the northern climate. Ultimately, Viking winter homes reflect a remarkable synthesis of architecture, social organization, and environmental intelligence. By designing spaces that simultaneously accommodated humans and animals, labor and rest, warmth and ventilation, the Vikings created living environments that were both practical and resilient. These homes were central to the continuity of family life, cultural practice, and community cohesion, demonstrating that survival in harsh climates required not only strength and courage, but ingenuity, foresight, and careful planning. The enduring lessons of Viking longhouses lie in their integration of multiple needs into a single functional ecosystem. Modern observers can appreciate the thoughtful balance of warmth, light, airflow, labor efficiency, and social interaction, all achieved without modern technology. These homes illustrate that architecture can be deeply responsive to environment, lifestyle, and community, creating spaces that nurture both physical survival and social vitality. The ingenuity of Viking winter settlements, refined over generations, remains a testament to human adaptability and the enduring importance of designing spaces that support work, rest, and interconnected life. By the time summer arrived in full, families had transitioned smoothly from months of confined, intensive indoor activity to a broader cycle of outdoor productivity, yet the lessons of winter life endured. Skills honed during the long months of cold were applied to farming, hunting, and crafting, and social cohesion, forged in the warmth and smoke of the longhouse, extended into cooperative settlement networks. The Viking longhouse was therefore more than a shelter. It was a living system, an incubator of survival skills, social bonds, and cultural identity that enabled communities to flourish across the extremes of the northern climate.